Hey friends, welcome back to Homestead on a Prayer. Today we're out in the garden expansion project. We've actually made a lot of progress in this garden already, and I'm really happy with how it's shaping up. We do still have quite a bit of work to do, quite a bit of stuff that still needs to be done, but I'm really happy with how it's looking so far. And today we are going to actually plant in one of these beds. I'm going to be planting potatoes today. Those will actually not be the first thing that I've planted out here, so before we really get started planting potatoes, I just want to show you guys what I do have planted out here and just kind of a quick update about how this garden is shaping up. One bonus thing that I like about this garden is you can see my chickens are right next to this whole garden area here. So while I'm out working in this garden, I can kind of watch the chickens and just hang out with them. They can roam around while I'm working out here. So you can see we got our arch trellis installed, the first one. We still need another one that's going to go between these two beds here. And then over here by the asparagus bed, which you can see I have to weed, we're going to be installing one here that's going to go over to this kind of problem corner, which is going to have another mini bed. I think I'm pretty settled and that's what I'm doing there. So over in this bed here, this is the back bed next to where our arch trellis is right now. You can see I did do a little bit of planting. I've got some puny little onion starts that I stuck in here. So I started those onions from seed and I started them a little bit later than I really should have, so they're kind of behind. I'm not sure how well they're going to do, so we're just going to keep an eye on them and see how they do. Those are blush onions, which is, I guess it would be considered a red onion, but instead of being red, it's sort of more pink. And I've never grown them before, but people say that they're sort of pinkish red on the outside and the inside is more like a yellow onion. So we're going to give those a try. Either way, I've heard that they have great flavor, so I figured those would be kind of fun to try. So those onions are actually the only thing I planted that you can see right now. I did sprinkle a little bit of seeds for companion plants around the edge here. I put some chamomile, some calendula, and then back in the middle there, I put some new Carota orange carrots on this side and Uzbek golden carrots on this side. None of those have germinated yet. Basically, well, really my long-term plan is for this bed to start out with garlic and the bed across from it to start out with strawberries. And then I'm thinking every year I'm going to end up switching those, put the new strawberry runners into the previous garlic bed and plant garlic into the previous strawberry bed. I'm still kind of working out the kinks on that because from what I understand, strawberries do best if you're continuously replanting the runners and the original plants don't produce actually for that long. Now, I'm still kind of working out the kinks on that, as I said, because I haven't really grown strawberries before and I don't want to pull them out too early. So I think what I'm thinking of is in that little problem corner I showed you guys, I'm going to get, I think, a smaller raised bed. These beds that I have here are 8x4. I think the one down there is going to be 6x3. Well, actually, I know that it's going to be 6x3 because I ordered it. It hasn't come in yet. And I'm thinking that what I'll do is I'll have like a 3-bed rotation where I'll have 2 of them be strawberries and 1 of them be garlic. And then basically the strawberries that we pull out will be the 2-year-old strawberries that get replanted with garlic. So the strawberries will have 2 years to produce. I think that's what I'm going to do. Obviously, it's not a perfect system since one of the beds is smaller. So every 3rd year we'll have a little bit smaller of one crop or the other. So if you have any better suggestions, I'm definitely open to that. That's the best that I've come up with at this time. But anyway, what will become the garlic bed this fall is going to be kind of a hodgepodge bed until then. Garlic doesn't get planted till the fall in my area, so I'm definitely not going to let this growing space sit unused. So I'm just going to kind of make it a random bed. I think I'll probably put a couple cherry tomatoes in it when the weather's warm enough and our last frost date has passed. For now, I put out some onions, I put out some companion flowers, and started some carrot seeds out here. So that'll kind of be what it is for now. And then in the fall, all that stuff will be done and we'll put garlic in there. So that's kind of what I'm thinking. So now on to what I'm actually planning to plant today, which is potatoes. Now you can see the bed behind me over there. That's the bed that we were just talking about. That'll ultimately be the garlic bed. For now it's going to be onions, cherry tomatoes, and kind of whatever else I decide to throw in there. This bed is going to be potatoes. So these are the potatoes that I'm planning to plant. Now, these are not seed potatoes. If you want the absolute best chance of success, ordering seed potatoes from a reputable company is probably the way to go. These are some of the organic potatoes that I actually bought from Azure Standard. As you can see, they're sprouting pretty seriously, and it's time to get these in the ground. Now, the thing with using grocery store potatoes as opposed to seed potatoes is that the grocery store potatoes are not going to be certified virus-free. So it is theoretically possible that some of these potatoes could have a potato virus. which wouldn't affect their safety or ability to eat them or anything like that, but it could affect how well they grow. So we're gonna give it a try. We're gonna see how these do. I decided rather than go out and buy extra seed potatoes just for the purpose of planting, I'm going to try using these. Now, even farther down the less than ideal spectrum, take a look at these potatoes in here. These are a little bit crazy. Now, earlier on in the year, before I bought my bulk order of these red potatoes, I also got a bulk order of gold potatoes. And I set some of those aside to save for planting. As you can see, I haven't checked on them in a while. They went a little bit overboard and got a little crazy. So this is definitely not ideal. I'm not sure that these will be successful. We are still going to try planting some of them and see what happens, because at this point, they're not really any good for eating anyway. I'm gonna see if I can detangle one from this ridiculous mess and show you guys. So as you can see, no one's going to want to eat this potato, so really the only use for it is to plant it. So we're gonna give it a try even though it's not ideal, and we're gonna see how they do, and I'm hoping that we'll get at least some harvest from these. So now I will say I'm not an expert on growing potatoes. I've grown them several times in the past, and I will say probably the biggest obstacle that I've encountered to potato success is voles. Now, voles live underground kind of like moles. The difference is that moles like to eat things like grubs and insects. They're carnivores basically, where voles like to eat plant material. So they live underground, which means that plants that grow underground, like these potatoes, like carrots, like things like that, are going to be their prime target. So what I have done in hopes of deterring them is when I put in this new raised bed, I lined the bottom with 1/4-inch hardware cloth. So I'm hoping that that will keep the voles out and protect the potatoes. In the past, to avoid voles, I have also grown potatoes in pots, which is okay. It does protect them from voles, but I find that they don't yield as well when grown in pots. So I'm hoping that by growing them in a raised bed like this with a lined bottom, that'll be the best of both worlds, and it will keep my potatoes safe from voles while still allowing them a nice good space to grow. So definitely stay tuned and see how this goes. So I didn't really do all that much to prepare these potatoes for planting. You can see some of the larger ones I did cut in half, and then I allowed the cut end to kind of scab over and dry. I did not really let that dry as long as you're supposed to. So ideally, I think once you cut it, you want to let it dry for between 24 and 48 hours, just to let that cut end heal up, and that is supposed to lower your chances of the potato rotting. Now, I actually did this last night, so it's been maybe 15 hours, something like that, and I did have a fan blowing on them to try to speed up the process because I wanted to be able to plant these today. So the ones that I did cut, I know that I'm taking a little bit of a risk. There's a chance that these could rot and not sprout, and we're just gonna hope that that doesn't happen, and we'll see what happens. So definitely follow along for updates if you're interested in seeing how that turns out. Now, a lot of these smaller ones, technically I could have cut these as well. Now, I'm not a potato growing expert, so I'm not telling you this is the ultimate way that you should do it. I'm just kind of sharing what I'm doing, and hopefully that will be helpful for some of you. I think what they say to do as a guideline, though, is to look at the potential sprouting sites on your potato and cut it so that you have at least 2 sprouting sites on each potato. So I could have cut some of these potatoes a little bit more. I chose to leave them whole, partly because it does reduce their chance of rotting, and also because they're not really that big. So this is all going to kind of be a giant experiment, and we're going to see how it goes together. So in this bed here, I have 32 square feet of growing space because it is 8 feet long and 4 feet wide. So what I plan to do is space these about 12 inches apart. So I'm thinking that I'll get about 32 potatoes in this bed. Again, I don't know if that is ideal spacing, but that's what I'm planning to do. I think that's what's most commonly recommended, is about 12 inches on all sides for potato spacing. So I'll be putting 32 potatoes in this bed. I have, I believe, 24 of these red potatoes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick out 8 of these golden potatoes that seem the most promising. We're going to try to grow these. I may throw some of these other ones in a pot too, because as I said, I mean, what do I really have to lose at this point? It's not like we're going to eat them or have any other way to make use of them. So the only thing that I'm really risking is growing space and a little bit of time. So we're gonna give it a try. We're gonna see what happens. Now, I am curious if you have ever grown potatoes that have sprouted like this. This is kind of crazy. What do you do? Do you cut the sprout so it's not quite so long? Do you plant it really deep? I'm not really sure what I'm gonna do. I might try a little bit of both, but if you do have experience growing potatoes that are that extremely sprouted like this, can you leave me a comment and let me know, because I'm not really sure what I'm doing there. I'm just kind of trying, and we're gonna see what happens. So as I said, we'll probably do a little bit of both. Now I was looking at these gold potatoes a little more closely, and this is interesting. Are these tiny potatoes forming on here? Does anyone know that? I am thinking that's probably what these are, but these must have been sprouting for a really long time in my garage. As I said, I haven't checked on these in a while. But I'm going to take that as a sign that these potatoes have a really strong will to live and a really strong determination to grow. We're going to take that as a good sign, and hopefully these will be more successful than I'm thinking they will be. Now it is supposed to rain here tonight, so I think that is probably a pretty ideal time to plant. I always like to plant, whether I'm planting plants or seeds or anything like that. It's kind of nice to plant right before rain because it makes your job a little bit easier. And something about rainwater, the plants seem to appreciate it a little more than water from the hose. So I think that is an ideal time to plant these. Now, I am probably going to water them in a little bit. I'm not sure exactly how much rain we're going to get, but I'm not going to really worry about being too thorough since I know we're supposed to get a good rain tonight. And then if it's not really that good of a rain, and then if it's not that much rainfall, I can always add more water in the morning. So now, when you plant potatoes, you want to make sure that the developing potatoes themselves that are going to form on the lower ends of the stems are not going to be able to be reached by sunlight. When you're growing potatoes and the developing potato tubers themselves can be reached by sunlight, what happens is they start to try to photosynthesize and they turn green, and they develop a chemical that is mildly toxic and kind of upset your stomach, so you obviously want to avoid that. So that's the reason why people like to hill dirt over their potatoes and make sure that you keep them well covered. That way any potatoes that are developing a little higher on the potato stem will still be protected from sunlight. So what I'm planning to do is I am most likely just going to bury these by a couple inches. I would like to bury as much of the sprouted ends as possible because they're probably not as strong, and I would like them to be protected down there. But I don't want to bury them so deeply that they use up all the energy that's stored in that potato before reaching the sunlight and being able for the leaves to reach the sunlight and make their own energy. So that's why people usually plant potatoes fairly shallowly and then pile more soil on top or add a thick layer of straw or some type of mulch as the season goes on. So I'm going to try to do something like that, and we'll see. We'll see exactly how well it works. You know, I think I'm going to actually, I know I planted that first potato. I think I'm going to actually go through and just mark the rest of the spots before I plant any more. That way I can make sure I space them how I want them to be spaced. So I'm making sure to leave a few inches on the side of the bed next to this trellis free because I'm going to plant something that's going to climb up this trellis. Thinking on this trellis, probably a winter squash. Right now I'm leaning towards doing a butternut squash on one side of the trellis and probably a honey nut squash on the other side of the trellis. So either way, those squash will not actually take up, if all goes according to plan, they shouldn't take up that much growing space in the actual bed, but most of the growing space will be kind of over the arch trellis and over the walkway. But I do want to make sure that I leave a little bit of space. Also, I think in this potato bed I'm going to experiment with growing some companion plants as well. Probably a few flowers, maybe some herbs, maybe even some bush beans. So we'll see. That'll kind of be an experiment, as I said. I've kind of hesitated about doing that with potatoes in the past just because you're supposed to hill the dirt on top of the potatoes or add mulch, and I wasn't sure how well that would work with companion plants. But I think I'm going to try it this year because the worst thing that can happen is that it doesn't work. So we'll find out together this year. All right, so I've got the holes all prepped in the bed here. Here's my potatoes. I'm just going to plant these and cover them with just a couple inches of compost. Now, I don't think I clarified when I was talking about this garden before. I don't know if this is the best idea, but it's what I'm doing this year. All of these garden beds are filled with 100% compost. I was able to buy quite a bit of compost in bulk from my local landscaping company. And my original plan was to buy all that compost and then possibly get some topsoil or garden soil or something like that from a local home improvement store and mix them together. And then when I saw the price at my local home improvement store, my plan changed and I said, we're just going to do 100% compost and we're going to see what happens. I know that may not be ideal. Sometimes seeds do have a harder time germinating in 100% compost. So some of the seeds that I plant may have a harder time, but we're going to try it anyway and we're going to see what happens. So we'll find out together, again, the results of that experiment. So many experiments going on in one gardening season. So we'll try our best to keep track and see how everything goes. All right, so I'm just gonna go ahead and plant these potatoes. Now this may kind of go without saying, but when you're planting a potato, you want to plant the sprouts kind of pointing up. So we're trying to do that so that these sprouts can get to sunlight as quickly as possible. So look at this crazy potato. Now I finished planting all the red potatoes. I'm digging through the gold potatoes to try to find the best ones to plant. And look at those have to be tiny potatoes, right? That's kind of crazy. So I'm gonna go ahead and plant some of these. We're gonna hope for the best. And I'll definitely keep you guys updated about how my crazy gold potatoes do this year. Now you can see these gold potatoes, even with planting them on the deeper side, some of them are still kind of sticking out of the ground. I'm trying to bury a little more of the stem by planting it sideways as much as I can. I don't know if that's a good idea or not, but this is just an experiment and we'll see what happens. So I got all the potatoes in this bed planted. I do actually have quite a few of the gold potatoes left. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to find some pots and try to plant those. It is very hard for me to actually choose to discard a plant that wants to grow. So I'm going to try and give those the best chance that they have, at least as many as I can. Now, if you're wondering when to plant potatoes in your area, I can tell you your best bet is to check with a local gardener who's experienced with growing potatoes in your area, because they'll be able to tell you more specifically. I will say in my area, I usually plant mid to late April. Now, potatoes are not completely frost sensitive. They can handle a light frost. They will not want a really hard frost. In my area, we have most likely not had our last frost for the season yet, but we're late enough into the season that any frost we have should be pretty mild, and so these potatoes should be fine. So I know a lot of people say their rule of thumb is kind of when you see dandelions blooming in your area, that's when it's time to plant potatoes. But again, I would definitely check with experienced gardeners or potato growers in your area and see what they recommend, because they'll be able to give you the most specific timing and the best timing for your specific area. So thank you guys so much for hanging out with me and planting potatoes with me today. I hope that you guys enjoyed starting a lot of these garden experiments together. I know I'm looking forward to seeing the results, and I hope that you guys are too. So I hope that you guys join me again, and I will definitely update you on how my potatoes are doing and how everything else in the garden is going too. I hope you guys are having a great growing season and looking forward to a fun and productive gardening season. I will see you guys next time. Until then, have a great day.